Zombieland is one of the most beloved zombie comedies ever made, and honestly, it deserves that reputation. But it's also a movie that falls apart the second you start thinking about literally anything happening on screen. From survival rules that would get you killed to an entire power grid that shouldn't exist, today we're breaking down everything wrong with Zombieland, starting with the very first rule. Rule 1, the cardio contradiction. Columbus opens the movie with what he considers the single most important survival wisdom he's developed over 2 months of the zombie apocalypse. Rule 1, cardio. His reasoning is simple. When the virus struck, for obvious reasons, the first ones to go were the fatties. On the surface, that tracks. Being able to outrun a zombie seems like a solid strategy, but here's the thing. Cardio is only one piece of the fitness puzzle, and it's not even the most important one. Think about what you'd actually need to do daily in the zombie apocalypse. Swing a baseball bat hard enough to crack a skull, drag furniture to barricade a door, climb a fence with a 30-pound backpack, wrestle free when a zombie grabs your arm. Every single one of those tasks requires muscular strength, not cardiovascular endurance. A marathon runner who can't swing a fire axe is just a guy who dies tired. Columbus had 2 full months to develop these rules, and the best he came up with for Rule 1 was be able to run far. That's like a firefighter writing a survival manual, and the first chapter is just wear comfortable shoes. Cross-training is objectively superior to pure cardio for survival. You need endurance and strength and explosive force. Any personal trainer on the planet could tell you this. Columbus apparently could not, but the film never acknowledges this gap. Every time Columbus survives an encounter, the movie frames it as validation of his rules rather than what it actually is, which is a combination of luck, Tallahassee's firepower, and the fact that these zombies have the tactical awareness of a golden retriever chasing a tennis ball. Columbus's neurotic rulemaking is genuinely funny. Watching this anxious kid treat the apocalypse like a self-help seminar is great comedy, but the rules themselves wouldn't survive 5 minutes of actual scrutiny, which is, not ideal when your life depends on it. This is the pattern for the entire film. Style over substance, comedy over logic, vibes over coherence. And it only gets worse from here, because at least Rule 1 is debatable. The next problem? That one breaks the laws of physics. The infinite power grid. Let's talk about the elephant in the room that nobody seems to want to address. Pacific Playland, the entire narrative destination of this film, runs on electricity. Fully operational rides, carnival lighting, mechanical attractions spinning away like someone's been paying the electric bill. In a world where 99.9% of the human population has been turned into flesh-eating maniacs. Here's the thing. Power plants don't run themselves. They require constant human oversight, technical expertise, and round-the-clock maintenance to keep generating electricity. Substations need monitoring, transformers need servicing. Thousands of miles of transmission lines need to not be, destroyed by the apocalypse. With essentially 0 qualified humans left alive, every single link in that chain should have collapsed within days, maybe weeks if we're being generous. But no, Wichita and Little Rock show up to Pacific Playland, flip a switch, and the whole park lights up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Carnival music blasting, rides spinning, lights blazing across the California night sky, which is, not ideal when you're trying to avoid attracting every zombie within a 10-mile radius. But we'll get to that stupidity later. The real kicker is that the filmmakers clearly knew this was a problem. Zombieland, Double Tap, the sequel released a full decade later, attempts a retroactive fix by explaining that everything runs on power from hydroelectric dams. Cool, great. Except hydroelectric dams also require ongoing technical management, preventive maintenance, component replacement, and constant monitoring to function. They don't just sit there generating free electricity forever like some kind of magical waterfall battery. And even if the dams somehow kept running on autopilot, the electrical grid connecting a distant dam to one specific amusement park in California requires maintained substations, transformers, and distribution infrastructure across hundreds or thousands of miles of zombie-infested wasteland. So the sequel's explanation doesn't fix the problem. It actually makes it worse by drawing attention to an inconsistency the filmmakers obviously recognized but couldn't solve. Hey, remember that thing that made no sense? Here's a reason that also makes no sense. Add that to the list. The truth is simple. A realistically depicted post-apocalyptic amusement park would be pitch black, mechanically dead, and slowly rotting, but that would make for a terrible movie climax. So the film chose spectacle over physics. And honestly, I respect the commitment. I just can't pretend it makes sense. But if the power grid situation bothers you, wait until you hear about Tallahassee's entire quest being built on a snack cake lie, the Twinkie expiration date. Tallahassee's entire personality can be boiled down to 2 things: killing zombies and finding Twinkies. The zombie part works. The Twinkie part does not, because the movie's emotional engine, the one quest that defines Tallahassee as more than just a guy with a cowboy hat and anger issues, is built on a factual lie. Here's the thing. Twinkies are not immortal. They never were. The cultural myth that Twinkies would survive a nuclear apocalypse is one of those facts that everyone believes and nobody has ever actually checked. Before 2012, a Twinkie lasted 7 to 10 days on a retail shelf. The absolute maximum shelf life was 26 days. That's it, 26 days. After the 2012 reformulation with stronger preservatives, they bumped that number up to a whopping 45 days, which still wouldn't matter because this movie came out in 2009. Columbus tells us directly that approximately 2 months have passed since the outbreak. That's roughly 60 days, which means every single Twinkie left in America has been expired for over a month. Tallahassee isn't searching for the last delicious snack cake on Earth, he's searching for the last piece of expired sponge cake on Earth. He's on a cross-country road trip for stale cream filling, which is, not ideal. But wait, remember the crashed Hostess truck they find? The one where individual Snowballs packages come pouring out loose like some kind of snack cake avalanche? Real delivery trucks don't work like that. Hostess products ship from the factory in boxes stacked on shelves inside the truck. Even if some panicking employee frantically loaded the thing before fleeing, they'd be throwing in boxed product. You wouldn't get a loose waterfall of individually wrapped Snowballs tumbling out the back door. I don't know what to tell you. That truck was packed by the props department, not by Hostess. And then there's the payoff. Tallahassee finally, after an entire movie of searching, gets his hands on actual Twinkies, and Columbus shoots them through a door because he thought there was a zombie behind it. The quest ends in friendly fire and destroyed snack cakes. Beautiful. But here's the kicker. The Twinkies that Woody Harrelson actually eats on camera, they're not real Twinkies. Harrelson is a strict vegan, so every Twinkie he consumed during filming was a vegan substitute. The man spent an entire movie desperately hunting for a snack that was already expired, finally got it destroyed by his own teammate, and the version he does eat on screen is a fake. The quest was doomed on every conceivable level. The food was expired, the truck was wrong, the payoff got shot, and the actor wouldn't eat the real thing anyway. Great, add that to the list. But if the Twinkie quest is built on bad science, wait until you see what happens when you actually try to count Columbus's rules. The 32 rules versus 19 rules discrepancy. This is where Columbus's whole deal starts to fall apart. His entire personality is built on one thing: obsessive, compulsive, neurotic organization. The guy has a numbered list for surviving the apocalypse. That's his identity. That's what separates him from every other scared college kid stumbling through the wasteland. So you'd think the list itself would be, organized. It's not. The film tells us Columbus has created 33 rules by the time the credits roll. Sounds impressive. Sounds thorough. Except only about 19 to 22 of those rules are ever actually shown on screen or verbally referenced. The rest just don't exist as far as the audience is concerned. They're phantom rules. Columbus apparently has an entire chunk of survival wisdom he never bothered to share with anyone, including us. But here's where it gets weird. The numbering doesn't even make sense for the rules we can see. The list jumps from Rule 10 straight to Rule 13 with zero explanation. Multiple other gaps appear throughout the system. Rules just skip numbers like Columbus was writing them down during an earthquake and lost count halfway through. Then there's Rule 17. Originally it's don't be a hero. Classic Columbus. Cautious, cowardly, practical. But after he faces his greatest fear at Pacific Playland, he revises it to be a hero, which is a nice character moment, sure, but it also means the list isn't a survival guide. It's a mood journal. He's not documenting tested principles. He's scribbling down whatever feels right in the moment and slapping a number on it. And the sequel makes it even worse. In Double Tap, Rule 26, a little sunscreen never hurt anybody, gets renumbered as Rule 36. Same rule, different number, zero explanation. The entire system apparently underwent a major revision between films that nobody acknowledged or justified. Here's the thing. A genuinely orderly mind, the exact personality type Columbus is written to embody, would not produce a 33-item list with gaps, revisions, contradictions, and phantom entries. That's not organization. That's a guy who thinks he's organized because he uses numbers. There's a difference. The comedy works because his false sense of control is funny, but the film also wants us to believe these rules literally kept him alive for 2 months. You can't have both. Either the rules are reliable survival wisdom, or they're the anxious scribbles of a kid who watched too many self-help videos before the world ended. The movie wants it both ways and never picks a lane. But if a messy list is the worst thing about Columbus's system, wait until you see what happens when the film tries to handle actual physics. The physics of the zombie kill of the week. Sister Cynthia Knickerbocker is a legend. She earned the coveted zombie kill of the week by dropping an entire piano on a zombie, which is, one way to handle that situation. Other nominees include a construction worker who flattened one with a steamroller, and a biker who used his motorcycle as a blunt instrument of divine justice. These are all presented as peak zombie elimination. The film celebrates them like Olympic highlights. And nobody seems to notice that they completely contradict everything Columbus has been preaching for the entire movie. Here's the thing. Columbus built his entire survival philosophy around efficiency. Conserve resources. Don't waste ammunition. Be precise. The double tap exists specifically because you're supposed to target the head, confirm the kill, and move on. That's the system. That's what we've been told works. But then the film introduces a competition that literally rewards the opposite approach. The zombie kill of the week isn't about precision or resource management. It's about who can waste the most energy in the most spectacular way possible. Dropping a piano on someone isn't a survival strategy. It's a Looney Tunes bit. And before you say it's just a comedy, relax. The film wants it both ways. It wants you to take Columbus's rules seriously as genuine survival wisdom, while simultaneously celebrating Tallahassee-style chaos as equally valid. Those two philosophies cannot coexist. One says, be smart, be careful, aim for the head. The other says, find the nearest steamroller and go nuts. The movie never picks a side. It just hopes you won't notice the contradiction. But here's where it gets genuinely wrong. Not tonally wrong, physically wrong. During the Pacific Playland climax, a zombie headbutts the passenger window of a Hummer and shatters it. Just smashes right through with its skull. Looks dramatic, feels dangerous. And it is completely impossible. Tempered automotive glass does not break from blunt force impact. That includes a human head. That includes a zombie head. That includes basically anything that isn't a sharply pointed object or a specific spring-loaded braking tool. This isn't a matter of opinion or interpretation. This is material science. You could slam your forehead into a car window all day and the only thing you'd break is your forehead. The glass would be fine. It might crack eventually under extreme sustained pressure, but it is not shattering on impact from a headbutt, ever. The film needed that window to break for the scene to work, so it just broke it. No explanation, no setup, no modified zombie strength justification. Just a head, some glass, and a prayer that nobody in the audience had ever watched a single episode of Mythbusters. This is the core problem with Zombieland's approach to zombie combat. The rules say one thing, the spectacle says another, and when the spectacle needs physics to cooperate, physics gets fired and replaced with whatever looks coolest. Columbus spent the whole movie telling us that careful, methodical elimination keeps you alive. The film spent the whole movie proving that careful and methodical is boring and pianos are better, but at least the kills are just inconsistent. Wait until you hear about the apartment encounter that breaks Columbus's entire backstory. The apartment 406. Paradox. Columbus spent 2 months building a survival philosophy based entirely on avoiding risk. He made rules about cardio, about checking back seats, about not being a hero. He talks about this system like it's scripture, and then the film shows us his very first zombie encounter, and it completely destroys everything he just told us. Here's what happens. His neighbor from apartment 406, played by Amber Heard, shows up at his door claiming she was bitten by a homeless man. She's scared, she's confused, and she needs help. And Columbus, the guy whose entire personality is built around pathological risk aversion, just lets her in, opens the door, welcomes her into his living space. During an active zombie apocalypse where people are literally converting into flesh-eating monsters in every apartment building in America. Let me explain why this is such a problem. Columbus had 2 full months of isolation, 2 months to think about threats, develop protocols, and prepare for exactly this scenario. Someone shows up at your door during the end of the world and says they were bitten? That's not a gray area. That's the most obvious red flag in the history of red flags. Every zombie movie ever made has established that bite equals infection. Columbus, a self-described shut-in who presumably consumed enormous amounts of horror media, should know this better than anyone alive, but he lets her in anyway. And then she turns. Because of course she turns. And Columbus is forced to kill her with the lid of his toilet tank. Not a weapon he prepared. Not something from a fortified position he'd spent 2 months building. A toilet lid. He grabbed the nearest heavy object in a panic, like someone who had zero preparation for this exact situation despite having had 60 days to prepare for this exact situation. Here's where it gets worse. Columbus lived in a multi-unit apartment complex, an entire building full of people who were presumably exposed to the same virus sweeping the country. Where did they all go? Did every single resident except Columbus and 406 just vanish? The film never addresses this. He apparently survived 2 months in a building where zombies could have been lurking behind every door on every floor, and 406 was his first and only encounter. That's not careful survival strategy. That's winning the lottery. And this is the real problem with the 406 scene. The film opens by selling us on the idea that Columbus's neurotic rule system is what kept him alive. His narration frames the rules as hard-won wisdom, lessons extracted from dangerous experience. But the very first scenario we witnessed tells a completely different story. Columbus didn't survive because of his rules. He survived despite breaking them. His rules are post hoc rationalizations, not genuine strategy. He's a guy who got lucky exactly once, then wrote down a bunch of guidelines and pretended they were the reason he was still breathing. The film accidentally reveals its own hand here. Columbus isn't a brilliant survivor who cracked the code of the apocalypse. He's a nervous kid who happened to not die, then built an entire identity around the fiction that his anxiety was actually intelligence, which is, relatable. But it's not exactly the survival methodology the movie keeps pretending it is. But if you think Columbus's judgment is questionable, wait until the group meets Bill Murray and somehow makes an even worse decision. The Bill Murray miscalculation. Bill Murray is the smartest character in this entire movie, and nobody in the film seems to notice or care. While Columbus and the gang are burning through gas, ammunition, and sanity on a cross-country road trip, Murray has been chilling in his Los Angeles mansion for 2 solid months. His strategy? Stay home, put on some makeup, walk around looking dead. That's it. That's the whole plan, and it works perfectly. Here's the thing. Murray's approach is demonstrably superior to everything Columbus has been preaching. No cardio required, no double tapping, no limbering up. Just stay in one place, conserve your resources, and occasionally shuffle around in zombie cosplay when you need groceries. Columbus built 33 rules for surviving the apocalypse, and Murray rendered all of them irrelevant by doing the exact opposite. The film never confronts this. It treats Murray's stationary deception method and the group's resource-depleting marathon as equally valid when one guy is living in a mansion watching Ghostbusters, and the other 4 are sleeping in gas stations. But the problems go beyond strategy. When Tallahassee meets Murray, he delivers the line 6 people left in the world, and you're one of them. Except there aren't 6. There are 5. Columbus, Tallahassee, Wichita, Little Rock, and Murray. The film's defense is that Tallahassee was counting some woman Columbus supposedly hooked up with in the back of a FedEx truck, a person whose survival status is completely unverified. So the justification for a basic math error is, well, maybe there's someone else out there we never confirmed is alive. Cool, add that to the list. The math thing is embarrassing but survivable. What isn't survivable is what happens next. Murray dies because Columbus shoots him during a prank where Murray impersonates a zombie. Tallahassee and Wichita think it's hilarious to have Murray shuffle toward Columbus in full zombie makeup, and Columbus, following every instinct his rules have drilled into him, puts a bullet in the guy. And this is where the film accidentally destroys its own logic. If a human can impersonate a zombie convincingly enough to fool trained survivors at close range, then every zombie encounter in this movie has a problem. How do you know any of them were actually zombies? Columbus has rules for double tapping, rules for cardio, rules for checking the back seat. He has 0 rules for confirming whether the thing shambling toward you is actually infected or just a guy in makeup having a really bad day. The one scenario that would matter most is the exact scenario his entire framework fails to address. Murray's death isn't just a comedic beat, it's an epistemological catastrophe. It proves that the identification problem exists, that it's lethal, and that nobody has developed any protocol for dealing with it. Columbus watched a man die because of this gap in his system, and then learned absolutely nothing from it. No new rule, no amendment, no Rule 34. Confirm zombie status before firing. Just that totally blows. And moving on. The fan favorite scene in the movie is also the scene that quietly proves Columbus's survival philosophy is incomplete. Murray's approach was better, and the group's method for identifying threats is fundamentally broken. But hey, at least they got to meet a celebrity. If you think accidentally killing the last famous person on Earth is a miscalculation, wait until you see what happens when the girls decide to turn on every light in an amusement park. The Pacific Playland Death Trap. This is the big one, not because it's the most obscure, but because it's the single dumbest decision any character makes in the entire film. And in a movie full of questionable choices, that's saying something. Wichita and Little Rock spent the entire movie pursuing Pacific Playland, their promised land, the one place on Earth that was totally zombie-free. They lied, stole, manipulated, and abandoned 2 perfectly capable allies just to reach this amusement park. Every stolen vehicle, every betrayal, all of it was in service of getting to this one location, and the very first thing they do when they arrive is turn on every single light and ride in the park. Pacific Playland was zombie-free for one reason, and one reason only. It was dark and quiet. There was no wall, no moat, no defense system. The park sat there in total silence, and zombies had 0 reason to wander over. The location's entire safety depended on it being invisible and inaudible, which, is not exactly a fortress. So when they flip the switch and suddenly carnival music is blasting, roller coasters are spinning, and the entire park lights up like a Christmas tree visible from miles away, they've essentially screamed "dinner's ready" to every zombie in Southern California. The park goes from the safest place on the continent to the most dangerous location in the film in about 4 seconds flat. Here's the thing, they didn't have to do this. They could have walked into the darkened park, sat on a bench, eaten some stale funnel cake, and enjoyed the exact conditions that made Pacific Playland zombie-free in the first place. Nobody forced them to activate the electrical grid. They chose spectacle over survival. And the film rewards that choice with a massive zombie siege that nearly kills everyone. And you can't even blame bad writing for the zombie attack. You have to blame the characters. Wichita is established as the smart one, the con artist, the strategist, the one who outmaneuvers Tallahassee and Columbus repeatedly. These are not idiots. And yet, the moment they reach their destination, they make the single worst tactical decision possible. It's like spending 6 months digging an underground bunker and then setting it on fire because you wanted to see what the flames looked like. Every tension beat in the finale exists because of this one choice. Columbus has to rush back to save them. Tallahassee has to lock himself in a booth and fight off a horde. Every bullet fired, every close call, every dramatic slow-motion zombie kill happens because two otherwise intelligent characters decided that riding a roller coaster was more important than staying alive. The climax only works because the script needed spectacle. It needed the lights, the music, the visual chaos of zombies swarming through a neon-lit amusement park. And honestly, it looks fantastic. One of the most visually memorable finales in zombie movie history, but it comes at the cost of its own characters' intelligence, and it retroactively makes their entire journey pointless. They didn't find a sanctuary, they found a dark parking lot with rides in it, and then they turned it into a death trap. And that's Zombieland in a nutshell. A movie so entertaining, so perfectly paced that you don't notice the logic collapsing underneath you. The rules don't hold up. The infrastructure makes no sense. The characters make decisions that would get them killed 6 times over. But none of that matters while you're watching it, because you're too busy laughing. It's only afterward, when your brain starts asking questions, that the whole thing falls apart. And honestly, that might be the most impressive trick the movie pulls. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.